Things that you can't really plan as a human being. You really can't tell what will happen. But you need to be guided by a power which is stronger than man. And that's really where the power of God lies. When I got a job in London in early 2000, it's something that I had really longed for. For us in the Shell world, London was our mecca. It's a place where everybody wanted to work at some stage of your career. And when I got there, I got there hoping that there are all sorts of rules, procedures, systems. So really your duty is to just come and do the work. And some of you have heard the saying, do not worry, your work will speak for you. That is not true. You may work very, very hard and turn water into wine, but your work may not speak for you. There are a lot of factors that bring success at work. So that's a sermon on its own. But one thing I realized, I was leading a team of 6 people in the Shell Center in London, and they were all Europeans, one New Zealand and many Europeans in the team. And I was following the book, the leadership book, how do you conduct meetings, how do you write minutes, and so on. We're looking after a global plan around the world, offered in 88 countries. So it was a very busy job. But then, over us, there was a lady who was the boss of many teams. Mine was a global share plan, another global something, and another global. Everybody there is in charge of the whole world for something. So my team had there was a young man from New Zealand who was in our team. And he somehow knew how to talk to the lady boss. So, every morning he would come, this man would change his voice. Hello, Pam. Oh, good morning. And me, I didn't know. I thought my work would speak for me. I didn't know how to change the voice. I didn't know how to handle myself. And this boy would speak, would ask about this lady, our lady boss, was a third-generation supporter of West Ham Football Club. The grandfather was a sponsor of West Ham, the father was. So she watches West Ham anywhere they play in the world. She will buy a ticket and attend the match. And I had noticed that everybody in the team had started going to watch West Ham. Me, I didn't go. Then eventually I found this young man he was not even a full-time employee. He was just not a casual, but a contract worker whom the lady had brought to help us with IT and so on. So I saw the man beginning to take over my job, I'll call meetings and he would take them over. Have you ever called a meeting and you're the chairman and some dominant person takes over the meeting, opens it, closes it, you bring a proposal, he shoots it down, brings an alternative suggestion, and people begin to follow. So I became very insecure, and when you're working abroad, you are issued what they call a work permit. And the work permit is what allows you to continue to stay in the country. If they fire you, then you have to leave the country because the work permit is involved. So those were years of insecurity, This young man didn't seem to know what to do. And I was actually about to give up, say, well, I think I can't survive. Then one of my friends, who was a doctor called Bachaita, visited London, and when I was telling him about the situation, how can I take control of my team again? And then he told me, but do you ever pray at work? I said, not quite. Do you have a Bible? I said, no. He said, my friend, you have this big trouble. They'll actually kick you out. So I started an experiment, going very early to work. 6 a.m. I'll be on the train. I'll be in the office praying. And I can tell you I managed to survive a 3-year contract. I got another one and another. So then Dr. Magara once came, and I also told him about it. He came to visit us in London, and we had a conversation, and he told me about the movement in Uganda. People here had actually, Uganda had changed. People had also learned to pray. But one last story is when that contract ended, we wanted to stay there a bit longer. When you stay longer, you overcome the fear and the terror of the work permit. So you can get some more rights, you get permanent residence, and if you stay even longer, then you can actually become a citizen. So I wanted to stay a bit longer and decided to do interviews. And I went for many, many interviews. And me, I would pass every interview. I remember one interview which I did in a town called Aberdeen. And I was going to be a very big lawyer. So I was going to get a promotion. So I went for the interview and did it very well. And when I finished, the man said, we've interviewed so many people, you are the best. Let me show you where you will sit. This will be your desk. But just wait for a phone call. We need to talk to our boss to sign off and you will get the job. Now I desperately needed that job because we needed, as I told you, the work permit was ending and I needed to have a job. You can't stay with the work in the job. So I went away very happy. I have a job in the bank. I'm just waiting for the phone call. But I can tell you, that was 2006. To this day, I'm waiting for that phone call. It has never happened. So when I was getting very desperate, again, I went to God in prayer, got a few friends to pray, and did another interview. Interview was in London. So somebody had flown in from The Hague to interview me. So we got into the room and he asked me a lot of questions. But he was very frank, he was Dutch, and Dutch people are normally very blunt and open. So he said, George, I'm going to interview you, but I want you to know we have a favorite candidate. I said, oh, in fact, that favorite candidate was trained in Oxford. Oh, first class brain, he has a lot of potential, he will grow up to become the head of human resources in the whole world in Shell. So I have been advised, in fact instructed by my bosses to give him this job. So that's the candidate you are facing. But this time I had actually prayed very hard. I said, oh, okay. Well, this give me a chance and maybe I do the interview. So I did the interview and he asked me questions. And I think it was like a trance. I answered so many questions. Lost all, really got lost in the world, describing what I do and so on. So at the end, he was actually quite unhappy. He said, you've done very well. But I think I need to take you somewhere else. Can you come to The Hague for another panel? So I went to The Hague, appeared before another interview. Again, I did very well. And he said, okay, the last interviews, these days, one of the factors they consider in Europe, if they're offering me a job, they don't want to hire people who disrupt teams. You can hire one person in a team, and becomes a big problem, tears it apart. So, took me for breakfast. Another group took me for tea. Another group, then they sit together and say, do you really like this person? They had done it for the Oxford white man. So at the end of that whole process, the man said, I'm really confused. I've been told to give this job to the young man from Oxford. But everybody wants to give you the job. So, anyway, he said I need a full week to think about it. Remember, I was really desperate. I needed the job. Next morning, he called and said, we decided to offer you a job. So, basically, that situation was solved. I got the job, I got the contract, I got the residence and other things. And yes, our children are actually there. And Jennifer, I agree with you because my daughter tells me, that she looks forward to one thing, returning back to Papa. And she's going to study, some people really love to go to England, but for her she says her only prize, when will I return to Uganda? And she reaches there, she works, and 2 months later, I asked this man, so tell me, you have been really threatened that you will not offer me the job. What prompted you to give me this job? Now, the man is by name was an atheist, this man who was interviewed. I said, somebody was in that room telling me, give this job to this man. So that's why I said, issue of prayer to God is actually a matter of survival. If you choose not to pray, you are doing it at your own risk. If you are the type who just shows up at work, you are like a soldier going to war without a sword, without a gun, without arms, you will be shot at and killed. So we all must be committed to prayer and be covered in prayer. So to me, if some of you see me walk with confidence, it's not because I'm Deputy IGG. It is because of the power of God. over the years. And I really encourage all of you to support the efforts of the altar, to support yourselves in prayer, to strengthen your prayers as individuals, strengthen them as a group. So as I finish, I would like to obviously introduce and welcome the guest of honor, Dr. Magara. Some of you may wonder why I'm sitting very humbly between these two powerful people. It's because of very many years of interaction. And for some reason you hear from me who the guest of honor is, and Jennifer, it's my friend Dorothy who told me, who gave me the secret, because we are being told there will be a guest of honor and there will be somebody talking. So I was pleasantly surprised that you brought people I know from many, many years. Dr. Magara I met when I was in S1, Dr. Magara was in S3. We were in the same dormitory actually. And so when I joined Budo, I found James. He looked exactly the same you see him. Very serious man, very serious Christian. You know, he's this type of Christian who have no plan B. Because there are Christians who have one leg here, when it suits them, you know. But James, from the time I first saw him as a young man in S3, he had no plan B. In fact, I asked him, James, what happened? I think he said his parents were Catholics or something, and he said he chose this path once and for all. So when James, whoever you invited James, I can tell you that you made the right choice. These people have been consistent, they have a very strong testimony, they have a strong story, and some of us can testify to it because we've seen it happen, and we hope we can also emulate it. I would like to welcome Dr. James Magara to this.
Thank you, Deputy IMDG, Executive Director, Kampala Catholic Secretary, leaders of the altar, and members of the altar. Thank you very much for inviting me to honoring me as guest. You know, these days I leave these honorable place seats to my colleagues here. I'm learning to tour behind them. About 10 years ago, a group of people working in an institution were bothered by what they were seeing. One of them wanted to leave. They had really got it, and on a couple of times had intimated to me that they were looking for another job. They made a decision we challenged them to start praying for the institution, so they made a decision to start praying. Because of the circumstances of the time, they couldn't meet in the institution. So they had to find another place to meet. Initially, they were about 15, but as the years wore on, the number began to go down. They began getting all kinds of things which they did not directly necessarily relate to what they decided to do, but which we now understand was probably a direct consequence of what they decided to do. It took about 3 years. At the end of those 3 years, there were about 6 people who would meet regularly on a weekly basis at what we call the altar. I'll talk about the altar briefly. Then suddenly, it's like dam waters burst loose. Changes happened so fast. Within a short time, one of them was considering applying for the top job. That person went ahead and did apply when they thought they couldn't get it. At least they're not the favored people. They got the job. The organization I'm talking about is the URA. I was part of that 3-year journey. So when we talk about the power of altars, I'm not talking theory. That's one of very many organizations that have witnessed firsthand the power of God in the workplace. When we talk about prayer and the word of the Spirit, you're probably between two places. Worldview. There are people they refer to as animists, and that's where most of our fathers were. In that generation, they believed everything was spirit. So if the tree did something, if the tree grew bending this way, then the tree was a spirit. If you are walking and the bird flew over you, then the spirits were saying something. For some people, if you got out of the house and the first person you met was a woman, you will not go out. You just go back. Because the spirits are saying it's a bad day. That's one extreme. But then there's the other extreme. And that gives us more or less the full spectrum. The other extreme is what we call the secularists. The secularists do not believe in spirit. Everything you can see and touch and smell, and if you can't pick it up with your five senses, it does not exist. If you can't test it in the test tube, it does not work. Something has happened between the generation of our grandfathers and our generation. Many of us who went through Western education have given up faith. We don't believe in the spirit world. We are much more in the secular world. And so we even feel uncomfortable with prayer. The biblical worldview is somewhere in the middle. That's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about altars, because if you talk about altars, we're talking about the spirit world. And I know some of you may still be having question marks. Is this thing real? Is it just a religious fad? I've been educated. I hold a degree in dentistry. I hold a master's degree in dentistry. I hold a master's degree in organizational leadership and management. I'm studying a doctorate right now. So I've been exposed to the academic world, but I can also tell you, I am a very firm believer in the spirit world. The spirit world is real. It's probably more real than what you can see. And if you ignore it, it's your own detriment. It's your own detriment. The spirit world, as he said, those who ignore the good side of the spirit world often end up on the other side. And so you'll find people doing all kinds of things, bringing white chickens in the office and slaughtering white chickens in offices. That is public, but there are so many private things going on. So many. Recently, I was shocked because I'm involved in the prayer movement, and we get, to pray with a lot of big people. And one time, I was invited to an office where the predecessor, I cannot name the office, but if I named it, you'd fall off your chair. The predecessor kept a live snake in the office. In this city of Kampala. So let's open our eyes, You can choose to be one or the other. For us to understand, the world was not made for spirits. This earth we live in was not created for spirits. It was created for men. If you want a verse, Psalm 115, verse 16 or something like that. The highest heavens belong to God. The earth he has made for men. It was not made for demons. It was never made for Satan. It was not even made for angels. It was made, that's why man had to be given a body. And when you lose your body, you're no longer relevant to us. You're gone. The only relevance you have to this world is when you have a body. So when God created the earth, he wanted a way. He himself is a very good delegator. He delegated the earth to men. That's why when Adam messed up, God intervened. You think God was not seeing when Adam was about to eat the fruit? He knew. But the earth had been delegated. Now, for the spirit world to have access on the earth, the person to whom the earth has been delegated must invite the spirit world. And that's a principle. It's a principle. Even God himself will not come unless men invite him. And how do men invite God? Through prayer. Demons cannot do anything on earth. If you know a house is haunted, someone is having mental problems or what, you need to ask one question. How did it enter? Because Satan cannot enter any place unless he has been given. By who? By the person who has been delegated. So you people are more powerful than you realize. You are much more powerful than you realize. Now, the question is, which world will you invite? And this is part of the problem we are faced with here. Which one will you invite? Let me just give some principles. I don't want to speak too long. I have 30 minutes to talk about. I can talk for altars for 2 hours. But let me give you some pointers. I've mentioned that the ark was not made for men. So what happens? God then, somehow Adam, the first man, must have learned this thing about altars, because we see his sons understood. When Cain and Abel brought an offering before the Lord, one of them just brought fruits, you remember? From the garden. And God didn't look at that too nicely. The other one brought a lamb. Or not just a lamb, brought an animal and sacrificed it. And God was pleased. And we are not told he raised an altar. I'll tell you about the first time the word altar was used in the Bible. But that act is a symbol of inviting the spiritual world on the earth. Now, the first time the word altar is used, I'll give the scriptures. We don't have time to look at all this. Genesis chapter 8. It's about Noah. After the flood, Noah comes out of the ark. And if you look at chapter 8, he says the first thing Noah did was to build an altar. And on it he sacrificed clean animals. It says Noah and his sons. It was a family altar. It was not Noah alone. Now, the significance of that altar is that this was the only man alive on earth. In him, according to Genesis chapter 10, all the families of the earth dispersed. So, what he did impacted up to today. When we see a rainbow, remember that altar. Because he was doing it on behalf of mankind that was to follow. So he builds an altar. The Bible says in Genesis chapter 8 that the smell of the animal, of the sacrifice went up to God. Now let me ask a question. God is a spirit. Has he got a nose? Does God have a nose? Have you seen God's nose? But it says God smelled. Now you will understand why when you're sleeping at night sometimes you will smell burning hair. Anyone ever experienced that? You don't live in Kampala. Every place I've lived in Kampala, including Mamirele, once in a while you wake up and smell burning bones, burning hair. Somebody is invoking a spirit. Where did they get it from? Noah did it. Noah got God, a spirit, to respond by raising an altar. Are we together? But it says he built an altar to the Lord, which means you can build an altar to another spirit. And people are doing it all the time in this city. Even in your offices, I'm pretty sure, I don't have to be a prophet. If we were to get X-ray eyes, we will find people who are raising altars here. It's happening because it's a spiritual principle. This guy raises an altar, and it says God was built to God. God responds. And what does God do? Genesis chapter 9, it says, then God blessed. Another principle. Every time you raise an altar to God, God will respond. And what will he do? He will come to do what? To bring a blessing. I have no doubt at all that the answer to your last 8 years is the leadership you have today. It is God answering. I've seen it again and again. Because you've raised an altar to God, you've cried out to God about the institution, God is answering. God is answering. It says, I will come to you and bless. If you want another scripture, write down Exodus 20:24. You can look at it later. God gave very specific instructions to Moses. Told him, when you get and enter the land you're going into, you will build an altar for me. Every place I put my name, I will come to you and bless you. Today I see too many Christians running around. Every time there's a new evangelist in town, they're looking for someone to lay hands on them. It's a waste of time. I hope there's no one like that here. If you want a blessing, you don't have to go running after. Just raise an altar to God. That's it. In your personal life, in your family, in the office, you want to open a door to invite the Spirit, God, to come and visit you and bless you. Raise an altar. That's the principle. That's the principle. Now, the converse is also true. When you enter an institution where people have practiced witchcraft, or they do it, the other people also come. The spirits that have been invited. But unfortunately, God describes Satan as the one who deceives the world. What do I mean? Somebody wants a job promotion. What do? They go to the judges. They sacrifice. They're asking. They're praying, by the way. It's also prayer. But it's prayer in another kingdom. Give us a job promotion. So, no, usually is what will you give me? So they get the job promotion. What have they done? Unknowingly, they are praising the spirits, but they do not know what they have released. Perhaps before I go there, let me just give you another story that will bring it to light. Genesis chapter 12. God calls a man called Abraham, tells him to enter the land. He comes into the land of Canaan. And now between Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 7 altars were built. They did not live in a home, they didn't have a house, they lived in tents. But the thing that was picked out about their lives, wherever they went, they built altars. There's a particular altar that you read about, I think it's around verse 8, chapter 12, where it says, Abraham built an altar with Bethel to the east, and I think it was Ai to the west. And he called on the name of the Lord. Now Abraham leaves, and just to give you an idea of the impact of altars, he's not yet got he's called about 75 years of age. At 100 years, 25 years later, he gives birth to Isaac. Okay? Remember, he's built an altar at the beginning. Isaac lives 40 years before he marries. He marries Rebecca. They don't have a child for 20 years. So we are now extending another 60 years. So 60 plus 25 is how many years? About 85 years.